Let's continue here with proportions. However, we're going to talk about what happens if we're dealing with conversions, converting from one unit to another unit. So let's look at this real life application. The graph shows the toll Y due on a turnpike for driving X miles. Your toll is $7.50. How many kilometers did you drive? So first let's take a look at this graph that they give us for the turnpike. If your toll was $7.50, how far did you travel? So your toll was $7.50. They're telling you drove 100 miles. I want to know how many kilometers you drove then. So if you drove 100 miles, we're trying to figure out how many kilometers that is. So you would write down the distance that you have right now and the units that you're in. So 100 miles. Now, you're trying to get to kilometers. So you need to figure out what the ratio is, or the conversion factors for kilometers to miles. So what I'm going to do first, though, is you're going to kind of set up a ratio. We're comparing kilometers, what you want to get to always goes on top, to miles, whatever you have now. Because the goal is to cancel these units out so you're just left with whatever you're trying to find. So now we need to figure out what is that conversion factor. For every 1 kilometer, or actually what you should rather do is you always want your denominator to be 1. So for every 1 mile, how many kilometers is that? So you could easily, if you don't have the conversion chart, type into Google, 1 mile is how many kilometers? And it'll give you that conversion if you need it. You should also be able to look on maybe a reference sheet that we've given you. We might give you like a cheat sheet of conversions. That also can be helpful. But if you don't have any of those resources, just type it right into Google if you need to, just to figure out the conversions. So 1 mile, it tells me, is 1.609 kilometers. So now I know that my units are going to cancel and I'm going to be left with kilometers. But now what should I do to figure out how many kilometers it is? What do I do with this 100 and this 1.609? You're going to multiply them, okay? Because they're both on the numerators, right? Our denominator is just 1 here. It's also, if you wanted to put this over 1, you could. So just multiply across. Do 100 times 1.609. And again, you'll get, and this is, maybe you know how to multiply by your hundreds or tens, you're really just moving the decimal to the right twice. So it's 160.9 kilometers. If you drove 100 miles, that's the same as 160.9 kilometers. That's our answer. So when we're continuing to do more conversion practice here, if you don't know the units and the conversion factors, you can simply Google them or look at our cheat sheet chart. You'll be able to use all these references during a quiz, or we'll be giving them to you specifically to use. So you just really need to know how to set these problems up. So let's continue to practice. I have 7.5 inches. I want to know how many centimeters that is. So the first thing you always want to do is write down what you have. So I have 7.5 inches. Now I'm trying to get to centimeters, which you'll always be multiplying, and then now you set up that ratio. I want to get to centimeters, so put what you want on top, and then put what you already have on the bottom. We're looking for that conversion factor of centimeters to inches. So I want to know what 1 inch is. How many centimeters is that? And I'm going to tell you it's 2.54. There are 2.54 centimeters in every inch. So how many centimeters are there in 7.5 inches? Well, go ahead. All you have to do is multiply these two numbers together to get your answer. So multiply those together. And when you do, you should have gotten 19.05. That's our answer. Let's try another one. Grams to ounces. So we'll set this up. Remember, always write down what you have now. So I'm going to write 100 grams times, and now let's set up what we have. Put your grams on the bottom, ounces on the top. Because remember, the goal is to get rid of what we already had and just be left with the units we're looking for. So now take a look at what is our ratio of grams to ounces. So every 1 gram, it's telling me is 0.0353 ounces. So now all you're going to do is multiply 100 times that, or move your decimal to the right twice. So we get 3.53 ounces. That I would say is the easiest way to do it. Could you have it so that your numerator is 1? Sure, and what do I mean by that? Let me show you. You could set it up so this is 100 grams times, and then again, you still have grams on the bottom and ounces on the top. But what if the conversion table, or what we give you, gives you for 1 ounce? I want to know how many grams that is, which would be 28.35. So you could do it this way, but what that's telling you to do now is, okay, we would multiply 100 times 1, but then we'd also multiply 1 times 28.35. Really what you end up doing is you end up dividing these numbers. So I'd really do 100 divided by 28.35, and I'd get about, it's going to kind of be a long decimal, 3.53 if I were to round it. See how we still get the same answer, but we used different conversions? Either way works. In one case, you're just multiplying across. In the other, you have to end up dividing the two numbers. So that's just something to know. I think the easiest setup is to kind of set it up how it's given. So I have 4 meters times, okay, I'm comparing feet. I want it in feet, so put that on top. I have meters. So see how one's on top, one's on the bottom? That means it's going to cancel. I would try to figure out what is the conversion factor for every 1 meter. How many feet is that? So maybe you have a chart you're looking at. Maybe you want to wait and I can tell you in a second. But our feet to meter ratio is that for every 1 meter, it is about 3.28 feet. So now I would just take 3.28 and multiply that by 4. So 4 meters is about 13.12 feet. And that's our answer. So these are all our answers up here. Let me fill that in. So make sure you have those set up. That is conversions. So that's converting from one unit to another. Let us know if you have any questions.